I want to play another moment today that happened with Senator Marshall, who seemed very focused on your public financial disclosures, which are required by law and filed. And there was an exchange over them where he seemed to think that they weren't accessible, and they are. You can get them here. Here was that exchange. Take a listen.
Yes or no, would you be willing to submit to Congress and the public a financial disclosure that includes your past and current investments? After all, your colleague, Dr. Walensky, and every member of Congress submits a financial disclosure that includes their investments.
I don't understand why you're asking me that question. My financial disclosure is public knowledge and has been so for the last 37 years or so, 35 years. It is totally accessible to you if you want it.
For the public. Is it accessible to the public?
To the public.
Great. We look
Senator
forward to reviewing it.
Totally incorrect.
Well, we look forward to
Marshall,
reviewing it.
Senator Marshall, Dr. Fauci has answered you. It is public information, and he's happy to give it to you if you would ask. Senator Moran.
What a moron. Jesus Christ.
Did sound like you at the end there, Dr. Fauci. You seemed a little frustrated with that line of inquiry.
Well, you know, Chris, it just as an example, again, he was implying, if you listen to the entire dialogue, that in my position, responsible for drug trials and having so-called inside knowledge of what drug works and drug doesn't work, that maybe I was making investments sort of like ahead of the game here. He was totally implying that. And he made the statement that we can't get your financial statement. It was stunning to me that a United States senator doesn't realize that my financial statement is public knowledge. It was just like, where have you been?
This is Dr. Fauci responding to his viral hot mic moment in which he called Republican Senator Roger Marshall a moron after he suggested that financial disclosures that have been publicly available for nearly 4 decades now somehow aren't available. And just for fun, I went on the very exclusive website Google.com to see if I might have some access to financial disclosures that are apparently so elusive, even a United States Senator, with all of the resources afforded to him, couldn't manage to find. And it took me all of 1 minute to find it, in all of its glory, considering I have a basic grasp of the English language and faster than a dial-up internet connection. And it really does beg the question, if Roger Marshall is so incompetent that finding a publicly available financial disclosure form proved a task insurmountable to him, what else can he do? I mean, I'm not a United States Senator, I don't have a staff, I managed to find it. What else is Roger Marshall failing at if even the most basic of tasks proves too difficult for him? And by the way, not to beat a dead horse here, but even if Dr. Fauci's financial disclosure wasn't already available online, all you have to do is fill out one simple form called OGE Form 201, OGE for Office of Government Ethics. That's it. And yet, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Marshall's having so much trouble with the concept of financial disclosures, considering he himself was more than 17 months late in disclosing some of his own financial information, leaving him in violation of the Stock Act. Because you know the saying, where there's smoke, there's a Republican politician guilty of doing exactly what he's accusing someone else of doing. Now, the reason for all of this is obvious. Roger Marshall clearly knows that Dr. Fauci's financial disclosures are publicly available, although the fact that he used such a piss-poor avenue to try and attack Dr. Fauci is still evidence enough that the guy is a moron. But the point of this is to follow the new Republican MO of just asking questions. I'm not saying Dr. Fauci has conflicts of interest. I'm just putting it out there that I haven't seen his financial disclosures. We see the same thing from Tucker Carlson all the time, where he wraps his accusations in the form of a question so that he can plant all the seeds of doubt and conspiracy theories that he wants, while still maintaining a degree of plausible deniability. I didn't accuse you of anything, I'm just asking questions. And so here, Marshall is clearly suggesting that Dr. Fauci has financial conflicts, and so he can't be trusted. Why? Because Fauci is the Republican scapegoat for all things pertaining to COVID. Trump pretended that the virus wasn't real and let it explode throughout the country. Blame Fauci. Republicans are anti-vax and their supporters are dying at exponentially higher rates than everyone else. Fauci's fault. Fox viewers are among the most at-risk people in the nation when it comes to hospitalizations and deaths because of the sheer quantity of COVID misinformation that they're consuming. Must be Fauci. Are you starting to understand? The fact is that Republicans have so clearly bungled their approach to this pandemic that the only possible way they can absolve themselves is if they have someone else to blame. And so they've decided that their scapegoat would be the nation's premier immunologist, because why not? The guy helped found a cure for vasculitis. He's the guy who led us through the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. He's the guy who got us through H1N1 and SARS and West Nile and Ebola and Zika and now through COVID, despite unfathomable opposition by an entire political party that is hell-bent on allowing this virus to spread. Their incompetence is only exceeded by their shamelessness. And by the way, this isn't a new strategy. This is what the right does. They home in on one person and brand them the villain of the century, responsible for all of history's problems. Fox feasted off of Hillary Clinton for years, a meal that continues to this very day. They know that they won't be successful attacking abstract concepts, and so instead, they choose someone to brand a villain and then batter them over and over and over, so that they can distract from their own failings. And so even though it's Republicans who have opposed pandemic safety measures, even though it's Republicans who refuse vaccines, even though it's Republicans who are ending up hospitalized and dying at exponentially higher rates than everyone else, they'll have you believe that the real problem here is Dr. Fauci, even though the people who actually listen to Dr. Fauci's advice are the ones surviving. Having trouble squaring that? Yeah, me too. So this isn't the first time that Republicans accuse Dr. Fauci of something nefarious, and it won't be the last. But just remember, if they weren't so hell-bent on turning a public health issue into a culture war issue, they wouldn't need to desperately search for a scapegoat to distract from their own failings. But because their priority is politics, because the deaths of their own supporters is clearly a risk they're willing to take, instead they'll continue to focus on Dr. Fauci instead of keeping the people who trust them alive. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.